Joe Rogan
Yep.
goes to Spotify.
Yep.
It's come out. It's $100 million at least.
But do we know over how long?
We don't know over how long. I would guess 3-ish years.
Really?
Yeah. Howard Stern was 100 million over 10. That was a long time ago. I think if you look at the value to Spotify, at least within the 48-hour span, it was $5 billion. Now, granted, that might go down as the market sentiment moves, but the value of their stocks went up by $5 billion.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's crazy. One guy's podcast just took their entire platform and mooned it.
Yeah. So I wanted to. This is what I think the big question is. Do you think, of course, was it 1 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion, 5 billion? I mean, Instagram was purchased for $1 billion and added so much more value to Facebook at the end of it. There's also this call her daddy thing, which is happening. And so I guess my question that I was really thinking about is, where is the value in the content and marketing ecosystem right now? Joe Rogan seems to indicate that it is with the individual creator. Does that?
It depends. I mean, it depends on the podcast.
Call her daddy pushes the other way. It seems like.
It depends on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Like Joe Rogan is the Joe Rogan experience. And also he owns the intellectual property completely himself and he's completely self-marketed. Call Her Daddy is the name of the podcast. You don't know the name of the girls. You know what I mean?
So for those of you who don't know, Call Her Daddy, you could tell the story. You know it better than I.
Yeah, sure. So Call Her Daddy is a podcast where these two women talk about sex. It's like locker room talk, but it's girls. Yeah. And they're attractive women. And Barstool Sports, after 1 month of them doing their podcast, Barstool Sports bought the podcast and then marketed it to their giant audience of young men who loved it, obviously. And so it blew up. And recently, the women on the podcast basically went to Barstool Sports. Were like, we're getting totally screwed by the contract we signed. We're way bigger and more successful than we thought we'd be. We're underpaid. We want to renegotiate. And according to the guy that runs Barstool Sports, he was like, okay, sure, let's do it. And gave them what sounds like a really fair deal if he's telling the truth, which is you're going to get $500,000 each, potential for, depending on downloads, millions of dollars each, and in 2 or 3 years, you will own 100% of the intellectual property for Call Her Daddy. And they said no. They said, nope, we think that undervalues us. We're going to go shop this around to other podcasts. And he said, okay, cool. Just so you know, that's absolutely not how contracts work. I have you under contract. I own Call Her Daddy, and I will sue you if you try to do Call Her Daddy on other platforms. And so the question is, what is the value of Call Her Daddy? Is it the name of the podcast? Is it these two hosts? Is it the fact that Barstool Sports promotes it? And so they're having this whole big fight, and how it shook out, unfortunately, is it sounds like one girl wanted to take the deal and one girl didn't. And so the owner of Barstool Sports was like, okay, well, I was going to give all of this away. I was going to give half to each of them. So he just went to the one that wanted to take it, said, hey, I'll give you 75%. I'll keep 25%. I'll find someone who's a sexy woman that wants to talk about sex. I'll offer her like $100,000 a year, which she'll be thrilled about. Yeah. And I'm way better off. You're way better off. And the other girl she doesn't want to be a part of it, so she doesn't have to be. Mm-hmm. And so that woman went, okay, sure. Yeah, I want to keep doing this podcast. Like, that seems fair. And then the woman that got cut out is now obviously furious. Yeah. So that's where that lies. And I think the deal there is basically the value, regardless of who's bringing the value. Like we always talk about, this business is largely about who writes the better contract. Mm-hmm. And they don't have the rights to Call Her Daddy. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're actresses in a podcast show owned by Barstool Sports, whereas Joe Rogan owns everything that has to do with the Joe Rogan experience. He owns all the footage. It's his thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep. And so the question, and maybe the contract wouldn't allow them, could they walk away from that particular podcast feed, the two of them? I don't know, because I'm not a listener. Start a new podcast called We Talk About Daddy Stuff and be just, because if somebody owned the Joe Rogan experience name, right? Mm-hmm. And they owned his RSS feed, that's amazing. But if Joe walked, he would destroy the value.
No, I think they can. Mm-hmm. Maybe not together, or maybe there's some non-compete stuff, but certainly they could each just go off and do their own podcast.
So have you listened to it ever? I'm just curious. Mm-mm. So this is one of the things that we did. So you did some of our scripts in the last handful of weeks, right? Mm-hmm. You've done 3 or 4 breakdowns at this point. They've done similarly to what I've done. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that we run a different style business than them? Like if I walked from Charisma on Command and didn't get to make a goodbye video, and you just kept going and never addressed it. And I started a YouTube channel with 0 subs, no marketing. Does anybody care? I don't think so.
Oh, you would struggle. You would struggle because I would own the email list too.
Yeah.
So it's like, so if you had the email list or something, well, you'd have no platform.
Yeah.
I'd have the Instagram, the email list, and the channel. And no one would know where you went.
Versus Joe Rogan wouldn't need that.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan could hop on his buddies or, he could go on his thing and say, hey, here's where I am now. And everyone on the internet would tell it and they would go to him. So
yes.
This is actually, we've done this weirdly kind of on purpose, especially in the last few years, because one of the things that we experienced was that we didn't want this brand to be tied to us.
I don't want to be Tony Robbins, who is in his 60s, and when he doesn't go on stage at his own event, the room is noticeably disappointed.
Palpably disappointed. Like, I didn't show up for the days that Tony was
people who don't know, Tony Robbins, he's burning out. His vocal cords are literally falling apart. So when he throws an event, he speaks every other day.
Yeah.
And his second in command, who he's trained and who he loves, speaks every other day. And the room does not care at all when that other guy's on stage. It is amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, we're here for Tony. And so, what's nice about Charisma on Command is, as much as people like us, and I appreciate that they like us, they're there for Charisma on Command, which is, the content is created by, at this point, Charlie or Ben. But if a third person came and did good work, it wouldn't destroy the business. Whereas Tony's guy might be good, but no one cares. They're there for Tony.
Does where the value lie literally come down to what you decide to name the business?
It might be, because I'll tell you what, if those girls left, I mean, here's the truth. Dave Portnoy, the guy that runs Barstool Sports, would just find 2 beautiful women who had raunchy sense of humor. He would slot them in to call her daddy. They would release the same time and day, and the audience would largely stay. And some people would leave, and some people would wonder, hey, what happened to those girls? And maybe listen to both podcasts. But people would stay. They'd be getting similar content. Like, I do think that IP, those girls are clearly very talented, but I mean, the IP is Call Her Daddy. That's what people say to listen to.
And this is what's crazy is a lot of people don't think about this when they're starting a business. Your number one marketing decision that you will ever make is what you call your business. Mm-hmm. That's the craziest thing to think about. And it doesn't mean that you should name it after yourself. In fact, there's good reasons why you shouldn't.
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah. But it's just, if they'd called it, I don't know the name, Sophia and something. Sarah talk about sex.
Yeah.
They would just, they couldn't. They're irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Same content, different label at the front of it, which is crazy to think about. And so then there's these in-between ones, Impulsive, which is like, okay, like kind of needs Logan Paul.
Well, I think it does need Logan Paul, and its co-hosts can swap out, right? Logan Paul's podcast has shown Logan talks to Mike, Logan talks to Mac, Logan talks to Spencer, and it's all good. But if Logan left and it was Mike and Spencer, I don't think it would last very long.
I don't know, man. I actually don't know that that's true. If they got a Jake Paul in there, or like anyone named Paul to go sit in Logan's seat, I'm not sure. But it is the thing that I'm seeing in just the handful of examples that we've given is that it comes down to the name. Now, I think there's other things. Audio versus video. So, and I guess force of personality is the other thing. So one of the reasons that I don't think I'm as essential to Charisma on Command is because when I make a breakdown, it's really not about me. It's about other people, and I don't tell my own stories in the breakdown context, which is where most people are familiar with us. Then there's these times where I am on camera and I am telling my own stories. I think if that were the majority of the channel or more of the channel, it'd obviously be harder to replace.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Me. But yeah, when you don't see someone's face, when you don't get to know their story, the power lies in the contract holder of the intellectual property. Now,
well, especially because for Call Her Daddy, they're going to keep one of the women.
Yeah.
And they're going to replace one of the women. Which I think is going to leave the podcast basically completely unharmed. Because you have to be a diehard fan of the woman that got cut out in order to be like, I'm going to stop listening to this thing that I like that still has half of the people I like out of principle for this other person.
So now, you know what I mean? Yeah. So now here's the question. How does this reflect on what is fair in these kinds of situations? Now, obviously, nobody cares what's fair in negotiating.
I was literally
nobody
just going to
cares.
say, we talked about this before, like business people just throw their morals out the window sometimes and really just go for maximize mine.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just thinking what is fair if I were a judge adjudicating this and was not looking at contracts. Was looking
for Joe or for Call Her Daddy?
Generally speaking, kind of is how. Like, so if you ran a coup and kicked me out of Charisma on Command, what is fair? It's like, well, he could keep it going without Charlie. Is like, does that mean that Charlie is officially useless and has already been paid for his contribution to Charisma on Command? Like,
well, this is why you got to get equity. Seriously, this is why you got to get equity. Because like at least the way the current contracts work in the U.S., you're actually not compensated for your effort tomorrow. You're compensated for taking the risk of quitting your job, funding half the business, and putting 6 years in. So, yeah, if you just left, you could literally just be like, hey, Ben, I don't want to do this anymore. So you can let this fail or keep it going. It's up to you, I guess, if you want to make money from this. And every month, money would just still come your way, even if you were doing nothing. And that's how businesses work, really, is it's who takes the initial risk to invest in it or to put the work into it.
And the other thing is just, I think we might be seeing a shift with this Joe Rogan moves for $100 million, makes Spotify, you know, on paper, $5 billion. I feel like there was the same thing happened with platforms back when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion. And people were like, that's absurd, $1 billion. And then they got WhatsApp. They're like, they're just throwing funny money around. This is insane. These valuations are 1999 levels of crazy. And then people like have subsequently realized that was a steal.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. $1 billion for Instagram.
Steal. Insanely undervalued. I mean, Facebook without Instagram is in a completely different place right now.
Yeah, I actually don't know many young people that use Facebook. Definitely not as their primary.
You log into other websites using your Facebook account. Like,
I know people that check Instagram 7 times a day, and all they use is Facebook Messenger. They don't even
7 is an underestimate, quite frankly. But so yeah, the people didn't really realize the value of these platforms. And I think Netflix was early on the train of realizing the value of content and just spending insane amounts of money. To me, at the time, I was looking like $200 million for one movie on Netflix to sell maybe a couple $8 subscriptions. I was like, this is crazy. But it seems like if you can produce and continue to produce content that people want, that is like the superpower now. Yeah. And it even supersedes platforms, because now these platforms are fighting over their content creators. It would be like if one of the top Instagram people, I don't know, Kendall Jenner, did an exclusive with TikTok or something. And it was like, no longer will I have my photos on Instagram. Like, they're only on TikTok. And I wonder if that's where we're headed, where
maybe
these platforms...
Probably a good move.
I mean, what Spotify showed is, at least in audio, if you poach the number one person, you become a contender on a different level. Now, it's a little bit different because audio is so fragmented and the Apple app kind of sucks. You know, like, there's no good discovery, but video is fragmented too. And so are photos. So like, why not poach a handful of these top creators?
Dude, can you imagine if Facebook bought PewDiePie?
Well, this is what I'm thinking. Like, why not? Why wouldn't Facebook look at this and go, I'll cut PewDiePie a $100 million contract over several years?
Especially when you're not the number one. You know what I mean? Like Sirius Radio, Spotify, these are not the number one thing at the time. Facebook wants to eat YouTube's lunch. Why not go to the number one content creator that gets the most views and go, hey, come to us now? You
immediately become, I mean, this is like...
You legitimize yourself.
A massive player. And to be fair, maybe some people think they are. To me, Facebook is not right now a video player on the Facebook thing. Like, they've got inflated views. You swipe over it. Oh, it's 50 million views. It's like, no, it's a handful of people scrolled over this. I don't know.
Can you imagine if just in one day they just got David Dobrik, PewDiePie, and like Mr. Beast?
Yeah.
Facebook would be legit again.
Yeah, and it would cost them a lot of money, but they might make billions of dollars off the valuation of that. And they're like, they're only going to make content for Instagram, Facebook, and this new app that we have. Instantly, you're talking tens of millions of people would go there. I mean, Disney Plus proved this when they're like, hey, we have all this content.
That was so smart.
Why don't we just take it to our platform? And so it at first, these platforms several years ago, Instagram had the power, and now it looks like it's actually even within these platforms, there's a handful of key movers that are like, no, you're going to get Disney Plus instead of Netflix, or you're gonna get this instead of that. It's crazy. And then I thought, no one's ever going to come for us.
I was thinking the opposite. I was thinking Spotify gave Joe Rogan $100 million, right? So what do you think we could get? 10 mil?
We can't move people from our main channel to our podcast channel on YouTube, dude.
We move some, dude. We move some. The best people. We got the best people.
No, we appreciate it. I do want to say we hit 20,000 subs, so thank you guys. That is,
woo!
It's
awesome.
You know what's funny is it's fun to care about milestones again, because I stopped caring about milestones for Charisma on Command, and they are vanity metrics. But I get so much more excited by growth on the podcast channel than I do by whatever happens on the Charisma
I'm new
to
creating
channel.
content for the Charisma on Command channel, so I get pretty hyped. This Ellen video is doing well, and I get to love myself now. It's nice.
That feels good.
Yeah, that's temporary validation.
Those
from
6
other people.
days of like, I made a video that people are watching.
Yeah.
Then
90 Day Fiance video comes out, and I have to reassess if I love myself or not. You know, Monday's a big day for me.
Did we want to say anything about the Ellen video? I forget. Well,
I don't think so. I mean, honestly, I think I did a decent job of saying that this isn't a hate piece. Mm-hmm. People still in the comments are saying, "Oh yeah, Ellen sucks. I've never liked her." Blah blah blah. But it was, I think, well couched in just being a analysis to learn from and not a hit piece.
Yeah. And so I've seen this. I was looking at our channels for trends and watching my own behavior. So the H3 and Keemstar, for those who are on YouTube, may or may not be familiar, are having this big beef. And within 4 minutes, it had 46,000 views, the most recent H3 video that went up. Which is, I mean, and by the way,
I didn't see the most recent one. Do you want to give people just a quick what's going on with?
And just so the people know, the way that YouTube tracks is it's behind. It's always behind in what it's representing to the viewer in terms of what's actually happened. So what I see on my dashboard and what you see in the first minutes, you're behind. So it's more than 46,000.
Sometimes people think that we're like hiring Indian bots, because they'll be like, 9,000 views, 10,000 likes. Impossible. Like, no, YouTube just busted. Just give it an hour. It'll catch up.
Hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.